Hello and welcome to another episode of Panel on Panels, the podcast about all things comics and comics related. I'm your host, John Campbell. Joining me as always, Mike Rigoni.
Hello, John.
And next to him, Mr. Donovan Eilert.
Greetings, everybody.
Pretty low key for you, Donovan.
Yeah, I just want to greet everybody. Is that fine?
The bare minimum of just greetings.
I usually go greetings. Today I went hello.
Yeah. That's all right.
And that threw Donovan
I'm not
off.
allowed to
Now,
have an off day, John?
Obviously, we're going to have to go back and start this again.
Yeah. If you're listening to this, something's happened.
Yeah.
We weren't able to re-record it.
There was an incident. Yeah, it's clearly a technical problem of some sort. Mm-hmm. Sadly, unable to fix that.
Feel free to send us money to
horrible
fix
mistake.
that.
Yeah.
Yes, please
Bags
send us
of
money to fix.
Or free comics. I think free comics would fix it,
Yeah,
too.
well, some free comics would definitely help. So, guys, today we're talking about a movie that just opened in theaters.
Yes, it did.
And it's called Ant-Man.
The Ant-Man. It's just Ant-Man. It's
It
not
is just
the
Ant-Man. It is, yeah.
Though they're constantly referring to him in the movie as the Ant-Man,
Yeah.
which I've always found a little strange, throwing a "the" in front of a superhero name.
Like the Batman.
Right. I mean, you're referring to it as an entity and like a mantle rather than just the guy.
But there are a couple they never do that with. I don't think I've ever heard the Superman.
I feel like...
Have you ever heard that?
Maybe, but no.
I feel like the ones that get the
Unless
title...
you're talking about Nietzsche, but yeah.
Well, sure, yeah.
The
Let's leave him out of this for now.
All right. We'll put a kibosh in Nietzsche.
Yeah.
The ones that have the before them, which sounds like a terrible sentence, but I promise.
before them.
I feel like are the ones that people aren't sure if they exist or not. Like it's the Batman or like the Ant-Man, especially in this movie. Spoilers for the whole thing. Are the whole? It's like, did he exist? And like, you're the Ant-Man, or
Right,
like Ant-Man did this. You know, so I
think that's a pretty good breakdown of that, actually.
Yeah. No, fair enough.
You're very welcome. I think about
certainly,
these things.
Thank you for the wide range of spoiler, the across the board spoiler alert there. Because we will be discussing this movie in depth. And
if you haven't seen it yet, we'll give you a moment right now to go out and go see it. Because let's just say off the top, it's a pretty good movie.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed that movie.
So go see it right now. Okay,
and now you're back. Yeah.
What'd you think? Now you're gonna hear what we think.
Yeah. So Ant-Man. Let's talk a little bit about Ant-Man just as a character in the comics.
Mm-hmm.
Are we talking about Scott Lang or Hank Pym?
Well, I mean, I think you have to start with Hank Pym.
Yeah.
Hank Pym, of course, the original Ant-Man.
You've already voiced your quasi-dislike. Can I just say straight up dislike of Hank Pym?
I don't think he needs to be an Avenger in my lineup. That's what I said. And I don't like how often he changes his name. This movie is great. He didn't change his name once.
True, he did not. But no, so Hank Pym is a scientist who builds... it's interesting. It's sort of in that Iron Man sort of fashion. He builds a suit.
Well, what he does is he invents a particle that can change the distances between molecules.
The Pym particle.
The Pym particle, which is sort of a formula / particle / science
Marvel
catch-all.
science.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then he builds the suit to harness that for a person.
Right.
So the suit is kind of a byproduct of the Pym particle, as opposed to the Iron Man suit.
True.
And that Tony Stark's continuing evolution into creating a better suit of armor.
Right. Yeah. So we have Hank Pym and his Pym Particles, and then he of course is married to Janet Van Dyne, who also can shrink and fly.
Used with a very light touch in this movie. Like, if they didn't have an actress listed as who was playing Janet Pym in the like end credits, I would have said it could have been anyone. It didn't matter.
Yeah, I think
Did they
it was
cast somebody specifically?
I don't think they did specifically.
I think if Janet's to be in another movie,
It'll be a different actress.
it would. Yeah, I don't think that actress would come back because you don't see her.
No.
Well, and something that you mentioned briefly, John, but something that's never made sense to me in any of the comics is why he gives her suit wings and he flies around on ants.
Because ants are sweet.
But like, why not just give yourself wings and fly with ants?
The ultimate
I don't know.
guy thing is to just drive around on things.
Just drive around on an ant.
He's obsessed with cars, obsessed with ants.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a very flimsy explanation
Also,
of that.
the ladies, they don't necessarily want to hop on a big gross ant.
But what?
I'm so glad you can be here to speak for the ladies, Gorgoni.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm constantly my feminine wiles.
Yeah. You're really in touch with what the female listeners
So many
are
people
into.
make comments about all the time your feminine wiles.
Oh yeah, Gorgonian. Oh, you mean Mike Gorgoni and his Feminine Wiles?
Yeah.
Great
not-
band name,
do
by the
Mike
way.
not-
Gorgoni and the Feminine Wiles.
Do
That would
not
be an
make me bust
amazing
out my
band.
fan dance.
Yep.
Oh no, you don't need to go all uhura on us. So Hank Pym, that, and then later we're introduced to Scott Lang.
Yes.
The second Ant-Man.
We're kind of introduced to Scott Lang pretty quickly before we really understand like where Hank Pym is coming from.
You mean in the comics?
I'm
or in the
talking
movie?
about the comics.
Oh, okay.
Let's start with the comics, and
Sure.
we'll get into the movie. But yeah, so in the comics, we're introduced to Scott Lang later,
Much later.
and he is, much as he is in the movie as well, sort of a he's a good guy, but in bad situations.
He's a thief who's doing it for all the right reasons.
Right.
He's trying to
A
support
Robin Hood.
It's Robin Hood-esque. He's trying to support his. In the comics, it was his sick daughter.
Cassie.
Yeah, Cassie Lang. Cassie Lang. Hope she continues to be a character in the movies. We'll see.
Yeah.
I doubt we're not going to be seeing Stature anytime soon. But
No.
It'd be a big flash forward. She's like 8 in this film.
yeah. So Young Avengers one day, maybe not in the next couple of phases though.
It's sort of the classic criminal with a heart of gold.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
That's
kind of
always been
thing.
Scott Lang. Always kind of trying to redeem himself, and that past is always kind of haunting him a little bit. People are like, "Well, but you were a criminal," and he's like, "Yeah, but I'm still a good guy."
Yeah. Now I'm Ant-Man. So, those are your Ant-Men. So let's talk about let's talk about the movie.
There
a
have
little
been
bit.
other Ant-Men in the comics,
Yeah, we don't.
but they're not relevant to this movie.
No, those are our Ant-Man.
You want a
for
really
this film.
fun read? Go read the Irredeemable.
Irredeemable Ant-Man. Yeah. Way different take on the character.
Oh yeah.
Translating into film, I think people know that there's sort of a troubled history on this movie, in that it was developed for years
Right.
by filmmaker Edgar Wright.
Of Scott Pilgrim fame.
Yeah, who we've already talked about on here, and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, and not to mention the Blood and Ice Cream trilogy.
Oh yeah.
But he was when they announced Iron Man and Incredible Hulk, they also announced Ant-Man. Those were the first 3 Marvel Studios movies that were announced.
And we got 2 of them.
We got 2 of them, and then it took years for an Ant-Man to come along. And by the time Ant-Man actually went into production, we suddenly hear that Edgar Wright is out
Right.
due to creative differences with Marvel.
And I said this right after we saw the movie. I'd be really fascinated to see exactly what was changed from Edgar Wright's original draft, or at least what his shooting draft was, to like force him away from this project. One of our friends said that like maybe it was a matter of like him not wanting to necessarily play ball with the whole like expanded universe stuff at Marvel.
I was looking at an interview the other day with Peyton Reed, who ended up directing the movie, where he talked a lot about what the differences between the scripts are. And I'm going to try to track that down here, but we'll also continue talking about other stuff while I do that.
What's so interesting is this one, for me, just as like an overall aesthetic, feels a lot like the first Iron Man movie. Like,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
there are a lot, and so it makes so much sense that they were released or the announcement was made at similar times, and you wonder how much of that production was going under the way, and they were kind of taking hints from each other as what to kind of do for this, because the Hulk and the Iron Man movie, they were kind of a new start in Marvel Comics. It felt like, because you had the
Marvel movies.
Yeah, sorry, did I say comics?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're getting that right now with Secret Wars.
Marvel Comics shut down for about 5 years. People probably don't know that. It's a made-up fact. That's why. And then these movies came about. So we had the Raimi Spider-Man trilogy
and we had the Singer X-Men movies.
and the Singer X-Men movies, but they always felt disparate of the Iron Man and the Hulk. And this,
because they were.
but I mean, they like, there's so many things aesthetically that just don't feel like they mesh up at all, which is why I think it's going to be really interesting if and when we see X-Men.
Well, you could say, I'm hesitant to say this. You could say that might even be like a limiting factor on the straight up Marvel Studio movies, because they have to all mesh into this bigger universe together, that might be a reason why a director like Edgar Wright, who's kind of known for his own distinct vision and style, might not necessarily be drawn to a Marvel film, or if he is drawn to a Marvel film, he might not necessarily see it all the way through because of creative differences with the studio.
That being said, the continuity in these Marvel movies, we've commented on before, is great. And they're now being really effective in the way that they're tying things together. But like if you watch Daredevil, there's like 4 references to the greater Marvel universe, and it feels like a standalone story in there. This movie, I mean, there's a couple things that directly relate to the other shared universe, but a majority of this movie just feels like a really good, fun heist movie.
Which is very much in keeping with what Edgar and his co-writer Joe Cornish created. That was always their design, was the heist movie.
Because they still have story credits on
and
this movie.
screenplay credits
and
as well, that they share with Adam McKay and Paul Rudd.
I heard an NPR announcement of this movie today, and they're like, Ant-Man starring Paul Rudd is the way they said. I was like, how? There's
Is
one
he not a big enough star yet that people get his name wrong?
Good old Paul Rudd.
And
How do you get Rudd?
There's one vowel.
R-U-D-D. Yeah,
There's one vowel.
makes no sense
was
at all.
Look, guys,
swerved into a median.
It's a silent, invisible E
Yeah,
at the end of his
There's
name.
4 umlauts stacked on top of the U.
It's what's called the Omega umlaut.
The Omega. Only fabled until now.
NPR found a way.
Yeah. They always do. Anyways, I'm sorry, John, I derailed that. I just could not believe, that was like on the way here, I could not believe that they said that. So mad.
yeah. So I mean, that was the basic structure of this movie is very much Edgar Wright and Joe Cornish's script. It's a heist movie. It's the mentor-mentee relationship between Hank Pym and Scott Lang. The third act being set in Cassie's bedroom.
Sure.
All that was them. But what wasn't them was,
The Avengers stuff, I'm guessing.
well, sure, yeah. I mean, the stuff
There's
was,
that whole scene I would say probably in the second act, where he has to infiltrate a event. Well, what he thinks is going to be an empty warehouse, and then he gets there, and then like, oh, if you've seen the end of Age of Ultron, you know that the Avengers have a new base, and guess what? Ant-Man has to break into now.
Well, as Peyton Reed was saying, Adam McKay, one of the writers, came up with the idea. This is a quote from Peyton Reed. Came up with the idea that in every heist movie, there's a trial by fire, and they've got everything in line for the heist, but we need this one thing. Adam pitched the idea of sending Scott on a mission for which he's not quite prepared, and he comes up against another Marvel character. So that
It
was,
plays really well.
No, and like him v Falcon, I thought was really fun.
oh yeah, it's super fun.
Also, seeing Falcon kind of like cut loose a little bit, and like this guy's like a pretty big badass. I could see him going toe to toe with some supervillains in future movies.
Yeah. His fighting style is really cool.
The other,
Quite honestly, you didn't see a ton of like just how cool Falcon could be in Winter Soldier. Like he was flying around shooting
pretty
stuff.
awesome.
Or Ultron. He makes, I mean...
Yeah,
He
but like
flies
the whole
and
thing
shoots.
where like, he's got like the crazy science goggles where he can zoom in and like scan
yeah,
for
yeah,
stuff.
yeah. That's true. The other thing that was, when we'll get into this as we
Maybe
start
talk
to
to
go,
birds with them.
Go through the movie, the other thing
hope
is,
so.
while they had the third act of in the bedroom, the microverse is entirely McKay and Rudd's contribution.
Oh, interesting.
All of that, none of that was in the Wright Cornish stuff.
Wait,
To be fair-
the Subnova?
Yeah,
Wasn't in the original?
No, that was not in Edgar Wright's stuff.
Wow. Because
Yeah.
that stuff plays, I
Yeah.
think, again, really well.
And it also opens up the Marvel like cinematic universe for a whole new world of possibilities. That's a little like on
Possibly
the nose and corny.
seeing some Micronauts.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think so, but
Come on, John.
Or
You
like
never
seeing
know.
the like microverse Hulk stuff where he like meets Jarrella and becomes like falls in love with the crazy like microverse civilization queen.
that's not going to happen.
I wonder-
There's
I don't know.
No
I don't
scenario.
know.
There's no way. That's,
Gorgoni and I have been writing this for weeks now,
that's
John.
too far on that. I don't.
To be fair, all we saw of the microverse was like crazy fractal patterns and
Yeah, kind of like an
insane-
MC Escher sort of thing.
Very cool.
It was the end of 2001: A Space Odyssey
Yeah.
kind of a thing.
But, I mean, what
I was expecting to see a space baby.
What is so good about that? Space baby? Is that what you said?
Yeah, you're not thinking.
No, I have. I just was not expecting the term space baby.
I don't know what else you'd call that.
No,
that's the only word I. That's the only term I.
It's
can think
accurate.
for
I
it.
just was putting that out of my brain for a minute. What's so interesting about that, though, is you see Scott Lang, who is a incredibly brilliant scientist, and just
He's got
how
a master's in electronic engineering or something.
Yes, yeah.
Wait, I'm
Electrical
sorry.
engineering?
Hank Pym.
Hank Pym is but Scott does have the electrical.
But what I was saying is the
Sciences
Hank
background.
Pym, who is so brilliant, and then you see like he's spent years studying this subatomic space and is still like terrified out of his mind about the possibilities of it. You know, obviously there's an emotional response there, but
Because
it just
Janet
seemed-
Van Dyne got lost in there.
yeah, exactly.
Right, yeah,
sacrificing herself to stop a nuke, nonetheless. Which
That
is,
was very like reminiscent of the original Cap story, like how him and like how Bucky originally got frozen in the ice. Is like they were taking out a nuke and Bucky was stuck on the nuke and like he wrote it down and.
I do wonder if they took any inspiration from that at all or anything.
I feel like they must have. That's like beat for beat exactly what happened in the original like Bucky and Cap story.
and something I wish we had more of in this movie were good flashbacks. We have essentially 2 flashbacks in this movie. We've got the one at the very, very beginning when Hank Pym is saying "F you" to all the Shield people.
We can go through the movie a little bit. The beginning of this movie is awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's the late 80s, right?
89.
Is it
Something like
89?
that.
Yeah,
It's 89.
And Hank Pym is meeting with Howard Stark, Peggy Carter, and then another guy.
The guy who like when I saw him was like, oh, so he's a bad guy. And when he showed up later in the movie, he was like, oh, so there's the bad guy again.
So I take him to be a Hydra agent inside of Shield at that
I
point.
think so, yeah.
I think that's they don't really go into it, but I'm assuming
they
that
call him
was
like
my
their
assumption.
weapons expert or something. And it was like, oh, so he's Hydra.
Yeah, that's what I figured, and that makes sense because we know there's been this history of Hydra within Shield. So, and we see what they want the Pym particles, right?
Right.
And Hank Pym is super badass in the scene when he smashes that guy's face into the table.
Oh yeah.
Was that I'm trying to remember? Did he smash that on mention of Janet?
Yes, because it's like if only you'd fought so hard to keep Janet safe, maybe she'd still be around. And he just like walks up, grabs the back of his head, and slams it into the table.
Yeah,
Yep.
and just like shatters his nose.
And Howard Stark is like, "Hey, he said it."
yeah,
Well, it's cool to see, you know, the actors we've seen for Peggy Carter and Howard Stark aged, and then Michael Douglas is obviously they're making him younger,
which is youngened,
which
yeah.
looked great. I thought.
No, it didn't have like the weird like CG-ness that you'd seen in like Tron with Jeff Bridges.
I think
It definitely looked
I think
really,
they're
really
getting
good.
better at that effect. It seems like to me.
Yeah,
But also the age makeup on like Peggy and John Slattery looked a lot better.
I think Slattery might just be Slattery though.
That's true. Yeah, fair enough.
they've graded him up a bit. I feel like.
I mean, he has pretty much white hair.
All right, fair enough.
In real life, so because you just switch actors there,
Yeah.
instead of an aged up Dominic Cooper.
Which I feel like would have been weird.
Well, not yeah, but we
you've already
already
seen
have precedent for Slattery as older Howard Stark.
Sure. He's
because of
Walt
Iron Man
Disney
2.
Stark.
Yeah, I like that he's Howard Stark was Howard Hughes, and then at some point he became Walt Disney.
Right.
That's cool. I just like that idea that like the 40s and the 60s were different times, so they needed different Howard Starks. So we go.
So
from
he says
that.
you can't
And
have
that,
the particle.
You're right, and then that
Resigns.
yeah, and that comes to then the Marvel logo comes up. We get this all. This was something that was started by Guardians. Was the first one to do this to do something before the Marvel logo came up.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah,
but you're right.
it's a legitimate prologue to a movie.
Yeah.
So we come in on that, and then we're introduced to Scott Lang
In prison.
in prison, being beaten by some guys, but as a sign of affection.
Right. You guys have the weirdest goodbyes.
Yeah, it is a very strange scene.
You come in on his last day in prison, which is kind of a cool place to come in.
Yeah, and he gets out, and his friend, whose name I will try to look up.
Luis?
Is it Luis?
I think it's Luis.
He's played by Michael Pena, who's
Yeah.
a great character actor.
He's great in this.
He's
He's
really
fantastic.
funny.
He's one of the funniest parts of this movie, for
This
sure.
movie, people have been asking me how this movie is. This movie, I feel like, of any of the Marvel movies, maybe barring Guardians, has the most legitimate jokes. Like,
Oh,
this
yeah.
movie feels like there are
I think
setup
this
and
movie is
punchlines.
comedy first, action second.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's not decreasing from the action. The action is
No.
like really, really cool, but this movie is a comedy first and foremost, I feel like.
I would say first. I don't know about foremost.
There's jokes like
I mean, I think
There's like five characters in there only for the jokes. John.
things. Something I've heard a lot of people compare it to is like an Ocean's 11 movie.
yeah, I think it's
Or
I
is-
think it's more jokey than that though.
I don't know. I think that's about on par. It's like these heist movies with a deft sort of touch.
I don't know. I feel like it's.
I don't. I mean, those are pretty funny movies. The Ocean's films.
Oh,
there's
sure.
a lot of jokes and
But
banter in those.
I feel like this movie was was fun. Or it had more jokes to it. It had more.
Oh, there's
to
a
it.
lot of jokes in this movie.
Because I feel
but
like
not-
the ocean stuff, not to derail Ant-Man, all the comedy comes out of the 11 people trying to interact with each other and the way that they do. Ant-Man was like just these people are funny people. You know, the Michael Pena character is funny.
Who is Louise, yeah.
Louise?
Yeah, that is
the
correct, yeah.
getaway driver. He's a funny character. Like these people who are
I don't remember the Russian guy's name. He's a character actor. I've seen him in a bunch of stuff before.
thousand.
Kurt is his name.
But like
Kurt and Dave are the other
when
two.
they initially see him doing the shrinking thing, and the Russian guy goes, "He's Gypsy Curse."
Yeah.
I lost it.
Yeah, that was
It's like,
pretty funny.
who claims a Gypsy Curse anymore?
So we meet, and Scott Lang's trying to go straight. He doesn't because of his daughter. He doesn't want to go back to prison.
Right.
He's working at Baskin Robbins under an assumed name.
Baskin Robbins always knows, man.
they always find out.
Yeah, they always find out. I love that scene with the manager. Is
He's
hilarious.
also that's another person who's in it there basically for the comedy.
Oh
of
sure,
that.
yeah.
I really respect what you're doing, but oh man, you're fired.
Oh, you're very fired. Yeah, no. Oh no, there's no way around that.
Hey, but listen, if you want to take a tropical freeze on your way out, I'll just look
he
the
does.
other way. He don't. Yeah.
Which is great.
Because we find out that the reason Scott Lang was in prison is because he like robbed some like billionaire.
Well, for a company he had worked for,
Right.
and then he found out they were
Stealing people's pensions? Is that what it was?
something like that, illicit things, and then he,
Right.
in very Robin Hood-like fashion, like gave all the money back to the people and like wrecked the guy's car and stuff.
Right.
So
He burgled.
yeah, he makes a big point about that. He burgled. He didn't,
He's not a robber.
yeah.
Robbing implies violence.
Yeah.
I'm a cat burglar.
There's no violent element.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is very much his style until he becomes Ant-Man, it feels like. You know, he's the punch back if somebody throws one at him kind of guy. He's not a scrappy brawler. Well, you always feel like Hank Pym, especially, I mean, you see that scene in the very beginning. He throws a guy's face into a table. Like,
No,
he is,
Hank Pym.
he's angry.
Yeah, that guy's got.
He's always angry.
Guy's got anger in him. That's got.
But I don't
language.
necessarily think Hank Pym's a scrapper in this movie as much as he's got a lot of anger.
Oh yeah.
He's carrying around the weight of. Not only is he responsible for all of the science he's coming up with, but he's also responsible for his estranged daughter, who is a character we have yet to talk about.
I was just gonna get to that. Hope Van Dyne, actually. Hope we're introduced to Hope Van Dyne and to our central antagonist Darren Cross in the same scene, where we see that Darren Cross is trying to crack the formula for Pym particles.
Yes.
to weaponize it.
Yeah,
Like, he's very specific that
I mean,
this
if you've
is-
seen the trailers, you've seen this whole thing. Imagine a soldier the size of an insect, and he wants to sell that to people, and because he's taken over the company from
He
sort
took
of
over Pym Technologies. He was
Yeah.
kind of like Hank Pym's protege,
Right.
who then turned on him.
exactly
That
yeah.
old
Even
evil
changes-
businessman
Yeah.
boy.
He changes the name of it, too. Does it cross?
He
He's
ta-
about to. I
Yeah,
think.
there's like blueprints for like Cross Technologies, a building that says that. Oh yeah, this guy is very evil.
Well, I don't know. Darren Cross, I feel like Yellow Jacket. He eventually
Yeah, not till the very, very end though. I was
The
really
very,
surprised
very
that
end,
it took
yeah.
as long as it did for him to become Yellow
I
Jacket.
felt like he was the weakest part of the whole movie.
I would agree.
Not just Darren Cross the character, not just the Yellow Jacket character, the actor specifically. I felt with just everything about it was kind of like, okay,
He's a serviceable bad guy, but that's it. Like it stops
Yeah.
at serviceable.
But we've seen the bad guy that is the like dark mirror of the superhero technology so many times already in the Marvel franchise by now. You've got Red Skull, who's got the super soldier formula that went bad. You've got Whiplash, who's got the arc reactor. You've got Obadiah Stane, who's got the big suit. I mean, like,
He
everybody.
reminded me most of Obadiah Stane, and especially with the fact that like he doesn't put on that Ironmonger suit until like the last scene. It's
Sure.
like structurally, it's even very similar.
But the thing about Obadiah Stane that I think is brilliant is for the majority of the movie, you feel like he's a good guy or he's got good intentions. Darren Cross, you see that first scene and you're like, you're a scuzzbag and you are the villain.
Quite honestly, I think he's the weakest bad guy of all of the Marvel movies, barring Malekith the Accursed.
yeah,
See,
I
I feel like Malekith has more to offer than Darren Cross does.
I would not agree with that. I don't.
He's
know.
a spooky-looking space elf, and that's all he's got going.
and once again, I put him in the same category. It's definitely serviceable.
Sure.
Like, fine to that movie.
That's the
yeah.
thing we get when we start talking about these Marvel movies and talking about their weaknesses and strengths is none of these movies are bad, I feel like.
No,
At least
like,
in my opinion.
Darren Cross isn't a bad character, and he serves his purpose from a story
Sure.
standpoint. He's just not incredibly well developed by any means. He's an evil businessman. I got it.
Right.
I got you. He's a character from RoboCop, basically.
But
Pretty much, yeah.
I've heard. I was reading a review the other where somebody compared him to an OCP guy, and it's like, it's pretty.
That's exactly right.
There are so many elements though that I didn't care for of that character, like the weird, he's going crazy because of this shrinking technology. I didn't
That
like
felt
him
like something they shoehorned in a later draft to me.
to make him try to feel a little bit more sympathetic, which he's not at all.
Yeah,
That's the thing.
I don't really know what they were trying to do with that. I don't know if they were trying to make him more sympathetic because that doesn't even come off as that.
Give
No,
him I
here's
think
the
it was
thing,
an
is they-
excuse for him to become unhinged quicker.
But I think they tried to. I said earlier, I wish they had more flashbacks. If we had seen him as a young, hopeful scientist that Hank Pym was then giving the cold shoulder and not helping out, you would get this character a lot more.
Yeah.
But for some reason, he's just like, you were my boss, and then you disappeared. Like, what's your problem, man?
Right.
Like, that just feels so stupid, like, so childish to me, like.
Yeah, I don't
You
know
know,
enough
he's trying
about
to
the
be-
character to say whether or not that feels like
And
him
I mean,
or whatever.
and again, I think they try to redeem it with there's that line of like, why did what do you say? Like, why didn't you share this with me? Is like, because I saw too much of myself in you. That's a great line.
Oh, yeah.
But still, that character doesn't feel grounded in anything. He's like, you left me on my own, and I had to do this myself, and I'm successful. I hate you. Why? You're successful. You
Yeah,
make a
but
lot of
he's-
money.
I mean,
You're
You did. That's the thing. If he hadn't also been trying to screw over Hank Pym the whole time, he probably would have gotten away with his plan.
Yep.
Like he would have, if he just like not tried to jab Hank Pym over and over again with like, "I'm doing this without you," ha ha. He would have totally like cracked the formula, made all of his evil Yellow Jacket soldiers, made a boatload of money selling them to Hydra, and nobody would have been the wiser. But like because of his hubris, he had to go in for those like needle jabs.
Classic supervillain flaw.
Sure, but we don't really get to see why he has that.
There's no backstory with that. It's
Yeah, I
it's
mean-
like 3 lines that imply
Look, here's
there was
the-
a mentor relationship that failed.
Origin films have a problem with their villains because so much of it has to be on the story of a hero becoming a hero. You look at almost any origin film; it's very tough to get across a good villain in there.
I know it's not an origin story, but look at look at Whiplash in Iron Man 2.
Yeah, but that's exactly. It's not an origin story.
Okay, so but
I think-
in 3 minutes during the opening when he's seeing the Stark technology and sees his father dying, like you
Yeah.
get his motivation for the entire thing.
Sure.
Obadiah Stane, you see that it's an origin story. You
I
get-
don't actually see that. Where is Obadiah Stane other than just being a bad guy?
He's just a greedy asshole.
I mean, I really don't feel like Obadiah Stane is that much more developed than Darren Cross. He's more interesting simply because of how much more ingrained he is in Tony Stark's life. But as for motivations,
And
he
he's-
also
he
is
has
just
more
a greedy
gravitas
person.
with Jeff Bridges. I feel like.
Sure, I mean, not to take any. Corey Stoll, I think, is a fantastic actor.
Sure.
I really like him a lot, actually.
And he's fine in this movie.
What happens with Obadiah Stane, though, is that you feel like he was living in the shadow of Howard Stark, and then he gets a moment to get rid of Tony Stark,
Yeah.
and do his thing, and it doesn't go his way, and so then he has to turn into the bad guy. Like if Tony would have just died, like he tried to kill him,
But once again, then
everything would have been fine.
I feel like that's no really more detailed than Darren Cross being upset that Hank Pym never trusted him enough.
He's like, you didn't want to be my friend. I'm going to destroy
No,
the
it's,
world.
it's not. You didn't want to be my friend. You didn't want to be my mentor. You didn't trust me with this. You kept this from me.
And he still was able to do it.
Oh, eventually, not when we first see him.
Sure. It doesn't feel grounded in anything.
No, but I mean, like I said, I don't think this is a new problem in one of these movies.
No, it's true.
And it doesn't.
Darren Cross is going to go down as another one of those bad guys when we look back at the whole Marvel continuity decades from now and go like, oh yeah, Yellow Jacket was a bad guy. Because all we remember is like Thanos and Loki and
I think people might remember Yellow Jacket, like the design.
maybe, yeah.
Because shoulder lasers and stuff like that.
Shoulder lasers were pretty sweet, not
Yeah.
going to lie.
I really like the design of the Yellow Jacket suit.
oh yeah.
It looks cool.
Now
It's very
available in Marvel Contest of Champions.
good. Is it?
If you guys are playing. Yeah,
Cool.
it's now Ant-Man themed.
Cool.
You can
That makes sense.
You can shrink the arenas, which is kind of cool.
So let's see. So Scott is not able to go straight
No.
Because he has a criminal record.
Well, there's that great scene where he's sitting outside the deli and he's like, "Okay, if I save this much money, pay this much for rent, I can see Cassie again and then it's like
317 days, I think.
Yeah, and it's just like, nope, can't do this. I can't make this work like this.
Right.
No, he has this driving impulse to be a part of his daughter's life that I think is such a huge driving force in the movie itself. It gives Paul Rudd and the guy who's playing Scott Lang such a through line through the movie that is reflected, I think, in the relationship between Hank Pym and his
This is a movie about fathers and daughters.
It totally is
exactly what this movie is about.
Because I think that's a character we really need to talk about is Evangeline Lilly playing
Hope Van Dyne,
who is, I think, coming out of this movie, my favorite character.
Really?
I think so.
I think she might be
Her
and Scott Lang.
Yeah. You can't not like Paul Rudd.
But I feel like
the
Paul
character
Rudd,
of Scott Lang, even beyond
Sure.
just Paul Rudd, I think is.
But what's so interesting? Sorry, Gergen, we'll get back to yours in just a second. But I felt like I was not exactly sure who the main character of this movie was at the end. Hank Pym and Scott Lang are both equally in it enough.
Yeah, I mean,
Janet Van Dyne is in there, even though she doesn't have solo scenes. She's in there as enough that's is there really a true Hope? I'm sorry, Janet's barely in it. Hope is in it. And it's who is the main character? I know it's Scott Lang because that's who they advertise it as. But when you look at the movie,
it's not because that's who they advertise it. It's because it's his story. He's the one.
Well, it's the story of Ant-Man, which is both Hank Pym and Scott Lang, which was what I found so interesting.
Yeah,
it does a really good job balancing the idea that yes, this the mantle of Ant-Man is a legacy thing because we see enough of Hank Pym being Ant-Man, even or hearing about him being Ant-Man, that is kind of ingrained in the identity of Hank Pym enough that he was Ant-Man, and now we're getting a new Ant-Man. This is an origin movie, but at the same time, it's kind of not, which I really like.
Yeah.
Well, it's an origin movie and it's a legacy superhero movie.
Right. It's a passing of the mantle story.
Which is I think that's the first time we've seen that really in one of these superhero movies.
Yeah.
Because it's a fairly common occurrence in comic books for somebody to be the new whatever.
We're gonna get that. I feel pretty soon with Cap and Falcon. I think once Chris Evans is kind of done, that we're gonna get the new.
I don't know.
Yeah,
you don't think so? I feel like that's what they're setting up. Is that?
I don't get that sense, but
really?
No.
I mean, that's where it went in the comics, but that was after years.
Yeah.
But I feel like Chris Evans is about done with that.
Well, he's got 4 more movies in his contract or something.
Is that true?
I believe so. 4 or 5.
Yeah, I mean, he'll be around for a while.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean,
2 of those are Avengers Part 3, so.
That's true.
But yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens with that. But I mean, they definitely, it's become clear that Falcon is going to be a major player in the universe.
At the very least in Civil War, which I'm really looking forward to.
And which there's definitely some setup at the very end of this movie, which we're going to talk about. So let's try to move through this movie a little bit. Scott breaks into Hank Pym's house because Louise has a tip that there's a safe.
I love Louise's stories. Those are one of my favorite parts of the movies. Is him and this guy told me about this. Who told me about this guy's girlfriend? Who told him about this? And they're all speaking in his voice, which is great.
And so they break into Hank Pym's house. You get to see how nimble a cat burglar Scott Lang
And
is.
serious parkour stuff he was doing there,
and some the intelligence he has to get through.
He's like a problem solver, right? It's here's this. Okay, if I do this, this, and this, I can get past it.
Man, the super glue on the tape in the ring over the stove to create the thumbprint was that was so.
He's got
cool.
some MacGyver almost kind of stuff,
Yeah.
right? But they break in. There's no money in the safe, but there is the Ant-Man suit.
right.
So he takes it.
He takes it, and then he puts it on. I like that idea.
That was one the original introduction of Scott Lang in the comics was that he stole the Ant-Man stuff from Hank Pym. Originally, it was so that he could use it to steal stuff to save his daughter.
Right. In this, he doesn't
it's
know
more of an accident. Yeah.
He doesn't. Well, and and then it's not an accident.
Right.
Well, because the Ant-Man stuff is still all fabled at this point. Everybody.
It's interesting. That's the Ant-Man's kind of because we're in the Marvel world, right? So we know they're superheroes, but Ant-Man is sort of like an urban legend, at least in the intelligence community.
Well, what this movie does, which I find very interesting, and I kind of wish they'd done more with it, is open up this Cold War era of Marvel that there were superheroes running around during that time, and Ant-Man was one of them. And we know that Peggy Carter and S.H.I.E.L.D. were up and running at that point. And like the Peggy Carter show has kind of given us some hints as to what was going on. Like the Russians were definitely up to some weird stuff with like proto Black Widow stuff.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, that first season of Agent Carter.
Oh, so good. So like I really want to. I would love to see like one of the mainstream Marvel movies set in this era.
That'd be so cool.
Yeah, no, that would be really cool.
Because Captain America is really the only timepiece that we've gotten.
Yeah,
right.
And Peggy
first
Carter,
Avenger.
or Agent Carter.
Sure.
It would be super cool to move
To
beyond
go into
that.
the Cold War, the 60s, 70s era superheroes.
Well, and I guess it's not the classic MCU, but we're getting the prequel to the X-Men stuff with First Class, Days of Future Past, and then Apocalypse.
Yeah,
which is cool too to see the timepieces involved in there.
for sure. So let's see. So he puts on the Ant-Man suit and activates it.
Yes.
And he's in a bathtub.
That
It starts
scene was pretty
filling
great.
with water. Like that first sequence, all the shrinking stuff is fantastic. I think in this movie, I think it's great.
Well, and you told me like a little bit of how they filmed that.
Yeah,
which
they
was
film
very interesting.
it's not CG in a traditional sense. Those are real. In film you call those plates. What is what you basically was when you shoot something to put on the green screen behind somebody.
Right.
So and instead of just generating a 3D world around him, they went in with macro cameras. Which are used to shoot insect documentaries, and they just film things, and then they put Paul Rudd on a green screen and had then put the plates behind him.
Right. That's super cool. I feel like.
No, that's a really innovative and cool way to do that, as opposed because the classic way you would think is that they would just make it all CG.
Yeah, just be digital. He'd be acting against tennis balls.
Right, but no, in this case, he's he's still on a green screen set, but the world he's in is a real world that some guys with cameras shot.
I think most of the ant stuff was probably CG. Like
Sure,
running around in the
yeah.
colony and
But
stuff.
the in people's houses, the backgrounds and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah, the ants are CG, of course. But this is a really cool scene as he's getting, and then Hank Pym is on a
voice in his ear, kind of like being like, "Oh, now is the real test. Like you're either gonna die or like prove that you're worthy of the Ant-Man suit."
Yeah. When I love this like mastermind thing where you find out that Hank Pym had set it up to get him the information to.
Right.
Because he infers he's been watching Scott for a while. I don't know.
Well,
exactly what that means.
he kind of said like ever since he did his first like Robin Hood burglary.
Yeah.
He was like, maybe this is the guy I need to, because Hank Pym's whole play is that he wants to stop Darren Cross from reproducing the Ant-Man stuff.
Right, and so clearly he's been concerned about Darren Cross doing this because also his daughter Hope is sort of undercover,
Right.
within.
But still doesn't like Hank Pym.
Doesn't like Hank Pym, but also doesn't want Darren Cross to destroy the world. So
Yeah, I love when he shows up to the company and he's like, "Yep, still alive. Like I'm still."
when the guy asks him for his ID, he says, "Does that suffice?" And there's the giant painting of him
Right in the lobby.
Oh, of course, sir. Yeah. That's pretty great stuff. So then he eventually meets Hank Pym.
Yeah, well, Hank calls him in. There's that classic scene in every heist movie where it's like, okay, this is the guy. Now we're getting all the pieces together. We have our inside person, who is Hope Van Dyne. We have our, like, odd jobs guy, who is Scott Lang, who's going to be doing, like, the nitty-gritty stuff.
He's
and then
your
we
point man, yeah.
And then we have the mastermind that is Hank Pym.
Well, and
they're your classic, like, trinity of thieves.
what's so great is after the first test run, he doesn't want the suit, so he goes to return it, gets arrested.
That's it. I was trying to remember what happened. Yeah, he
And
gets
then-
arrested.
No,
And
no, I
then
wasn't
his-
stealing something. I was putting something back that I had already stolen. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm screwed.
And then his lawyer is actually Hank Pym, and that's when they have their first face-to-face conversation about that.
Which is pretty great.
It was super cool.
And then a bunch of ants bring him the suit, and then they start counting down by turning into
That
different
was
shapes
cool.
and numbers.
How did he get into that suit so fast?
Yeah, I don't know. Whatever.
I never saw a zipper on that thing.
Here's the thing: cat burglars
it
can
actually
get in
looked-
and out of spandex
It actually
suits
looks like
real
one of the
quick.
least complicated suits.
Right. It was like it looked like biker leathers.
That's exactly what I mean, and that's what I think they're designed. Somebody even calls it a motorcycle suit at one point in the movie.
I love the helmet that opens and closes.
the helmet opening and closing is really cool.
Yeah.
It's got that Iron Man sort of like the faceplate lifting up. It's that same kind of idea. That's like a mechanized superhero mask is cool.
I like the weird like thing in front of his face. It can come down and like as a jaw thing, but it can also come off like a chin strap sort of a thing.
Yeah.
So it's like there's a very like this suit was not designed unlike the Iron Man suit. was clearly not designed for just straight up like I'm going to go blow up some tanks. This is a more like streamlined, stealthy kind of a
Very much so, yeah. Which fits befitting the character.
more
yeah.
Batman-esque than
Sure.
like Iron Man.
Yeah, exactly.
So he gets out of prison or the jail cell.
Yeah.
Hops
escapes
on the
with-
flying ant and
Oh
then
my God.
passes out.
Ants are probably my second favorite part of this movie.
The ants in this movie are interesting. I was talking to somebody about this movie. They asked me, and I was like, the ants are kind of adorable.
Oh, they're great.
And she was like, wait, they made ants adorable? How did they do that? And I said, well,
Have you seen Bug's Life?
well,
Have you seen Ants?
but here's the thing though.
None of them were Woody Allen.
This is
unfortunately.
what I was telling her though. Those are cartoon ants, right?
Yeah.
And they've been turned. These look like real ants.
Oh, they
but
do.
there's something about the way they interact, the way Paul Rudd interacts with them, that they become
Especially
adorable.
his like main flying ant, Anthony.
Anthony, yes. Because Hank Pym calls them numbers because
Right.
it doesn't matter. They don't need names.
And there are so many ants.
Right, yeah. But Scott Lang does have his prized
trusty
ant, yeah.
steed.
Yeah, he's got a sidekick ant. He's the
And I loved all the ants with the little devices strapped to them. Like there were some ants that could like shoot tiny little electrical cables.
that there were the different kinds of ants.
Right.
You see, he's got the ant farms. Hank Pym's got the ant farms in his hideout or whatever there, and
The
you
bullet
can,
ants.
Yeah, the bullet ants. These are your greatest allies, the ants, and they all do different things. Some conduct electricity.
It was very. I don't know if you ever played a Pikmin for
Yeah.
like
Oh,
Nintendo
yeah.
Wii. It felt a lot like that. Like each one has this different sort of skill, and you must gather them all together and use them in tandem to like accomplish certain goals. I could see a really cool video game being made out of some of this.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
Kind of ant control-y puzzle solving stuff.
Right, because Hank Pym has a device that he can use where he can control what the ants are doing.
He can suggest to them what they're doing.
Yeah,
He,
because
he becomes like the alpha ant.
yeah.
I mean, it's a hive mind situation that
Right.
he can be the
and
hive
then
mother.
and then a lot of then we enter our training sequence.
Right. That was a lot of fun. That montage.
Yeah, which is training him in several ways. He's learning to control the ants. He's learning to shrink and be effective while he's shrinking.
That's one of my favorite parts is like the idea that you build speed up while you're big, and then you shrink to carry yourself, and then you unshrink to be effective. So he's trying to jump through the keyhole in the door.
Keeps hitting the other
That's-
side. Just whoomp.
That's so
whoomp.
that's so awesome. Like
Well, this whole idea of like instant change. You need to be big until you get to the keyhole. Then you need to get through the keyhole and be big again. Mm-hmm. Like
You
that's
need to be able to change on a dime.
which is what's because people ask me about I've talked to people about Ant-Man and they're like, what if he shrinks? It's like, no, it's this whole thing about this constant like an instant size changes.
Also, the idea that he still has the proportionate, like he has more than his proportionate strength while he's tiny.
Yeah.
So it's like he has super strength relative to a big person while he's tiny.
Yeah, because as Hope says, when he hits like a bullet. Mm-hmm. Because then that's the other thing is you've got Hope teach him how to fight.
that's
Some of those scenes were great.
Yeah. Because Hope is way more badass than him with this
That
stuff.
was part of the reason I like her character so much. Like this movie feels like she should be the superhero the whole time.
Well, and throughout the whole movie, she keeps saying to her dad, "Put me in the suit."
Right.
And he says, "No, that's and then flat out that will never happen."
Right. And that's, as an audience member, that was super frustrating throughout the movie. Eventually, we learn like there are some very good reasons why Hank doesn't want her in the suit.
I mean, I kind of figured that was going to
Sure,
be the,
but they don't go
Right.
about revealing that
Yeah.
in any kind of timely fashion.
It's
Eventually, they just like, look, this is the reason why, in like kind of a frustrated breaking of the dam
I
kind of a
really
thing.
like those scenes.
Oh, yeah.
I think the a lot of the character dramatic stuff really works. I also like where she's pissed off at Hank, and then Scott talks to her, and he says, "The reason he's putting me in there is I'm expendable."
Right.
Like your father cares so much about you is why he's doing this.
well,
I can get swatted and he won't necessarily care, but
Right.
if you go down,
Yeah.
it'll destroy him.
well, and Scott, as a father, talks to her for her father, and that's
Yeah.
really cool to see. If like he knows what it's like because he's got a daughter,
Yeah,
So
who-
he understands where Hank Pym's coming from.
Cassie's in the movie here and there, and is a pretty delightful little girl.
She's really sweet.
Yeah, he gives her that creepy bunny, and she loves it.
Yeah.
It's so ugly. I love it.
Yeah. She's a quirky little kid. I like it.
Yeah.
But yeah, they clearly have like a unique bond that you don't see because I mean, there's her mother, played by Judy Greer, and then is she married to or she's like engaged to
Something
a
like
cop
that,
played by
yeah.
Bobby Cannavale.
Who you like?
Yeah, he's because he's not like He's not a bad guy. He's not trying to be a jerk.
But he's just trying to do his job, and that job happens to be involving arresting Scott Lang.
Right. And he wants to he legitimately loves Scott's ex-wife and Cassie as well.
Yeah. He wants what's best for them.
Yeah. And I like that the arc with them is good, that they sort of come to accept what each other is trying to do by the end of the movie.
Not to jump too far ahead, but that is just mayhem at the end when they go to arrest Hank Pym, and then the guy steals the cop car, and then they go to the cop car, and then they come back, and there's the tank, and then they hear the... I
love the tank keychain. That was great.
They hear the horn that was... He's like, oh, that's the van that Scott was driving. And then they go to arrest them. I mean, like, that whole turnaround is just like...
No, once... you're into the heist itself.
I'm just like, man, that was so good.
Which is... I mean, it feels like a classic movie heist where, like...
there's that bit in every heist where it's like everything gets thrown on its ear, where it's like somehow they've got to cobble together a success out of everything falling apart.
Right. And there's also a very Mission Impossible like thing where he has to jump through a tube that has a laser grate on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, we can only shut it down for 15 seconds.
Yep. That feels very Mission Impossible to me.
Yeah.
In a good way.
That was a little tension for tension's sake, where like the hacker needs to hit one last button to shut down the laser grid, and Scott's already leapt, and it's just like, and he's fighting to get to the button, and he presses it at the last second.
Like he's like, go, and then he jumps, and he's like, wait, what are you doing? He's already sailing through the air.
Right.
That was pretty great. And all the ants that are doing stuff. And Louise pretending to be the security guard.
I think I'll whistle to blend in.
Yeah. Don't whistle to blend in. And they cut to him whistling.
It's a small world.
It's a small world.
That was so clever,
which is free for them as well, too.
Oh, there you go.
Even though they do credit it in the...
they credit it, but it's a Disney song, and they're a Disney company, so it's free. But that was really funny.
That was really great.
It opens us up for all the Disney show tunes and all the Marvel movies.
And the Pinocchio in
That's
Age of
true.
Ultron.
Yeah.
So,
now it's becoming a running thing, I guess.
That's interesting.
I wonder which one they're going to use in Civil War.
On birthday.
Be a man.
Be a man. Probably.
But of course...
Cat must be swift as the raging river.
But of course, Darren Cross is ahead of them and traps Scott Lang in ant form inside of a glass jar, basically.
Basically, yeah.
It takes him a while to figure out the expanding discs that he has, which is also a cool gadget. The shrink disc and the expanding disc.
Yeah, he can basically throw Pym particles on other things.
Right.
And the expanding disc is obviously a precursor to something like a Giant Man.
I was actually pretty shocked we didn't see any Giant Man in this. I could have sworn that would have been like the third act twist, is like, we can shrink. Now I just become huge and squish you.
Giant Man is contingent on the end of this movie, though.
Sure, no, totally is
that ability, and they flip it in a really cool way. That's not that all you're not. If you know Giant Man, then you're like, oh, okay, yeah. There's the beginnings of Giant Man, which makes sense. If you can shrink, why can't you?
Why can't you grow?
Yeah. So you get that, and you get a Mexican standoff, and Hank gets shot.
Yeah, that was cool. Wasn't sure if he was going to live through this movie. Not going to lie.
Yeah, me too.
Like I was like, ooh, they could kill him.
Yeah, easily. They
pretty heart wrenching.
Yeah, they easily could have killed him. But of course, he doesn't die. He has and that's when he has the tank, shrunk down tank as a key. We saw his keys before. We had the tank.
Right. They always because Scott had stolen them earlier in the film and like used them, and we saw the tank keychain. And
you
so that was an established little thing. And then when he goes, it's not a keychain, and they're driving out of the.
But they're pulling the keychain part as well.
The huge keychain part.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. And so at this point, Darren Cross has gone full on supervillain.
The third act of this movie is absolutely bonkers. It's not like we start with the heist, and then once this heist starts going crazy, like we get the reveal that, oh, by the way, Hydra's back, and we're selling the Yellow Jacket to them.
I actually really like the blasé.
No, so do I.
Or it's just like, these men, they work for Hydra.
Yeah,
Hydra,
they're cool now.
Oh, Hydra again, of course.
They're doing some really cool stuff.
We can't. Because that feels very Marvel to me, where it's like, we can't get rid of these guys. No matter what you do, you're always going to, God damn it, Hydra's back.
I just want AIM to also start being there as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've introduced the concept of AIM, but they haven't really done much with it.
Also, I think we'll be seeing more of organizations like The Hand once we get more into it in Daredevil, I feel like.
Sure.
Seeing that evil ninja organization running around would be a lot of fun.
We see them a little bit in Daredevil.
Yeah. But I'm saying once we introduce The Hand proper.
Yeah. So, we get... there's a fight in a helicopter.
Yeah, that was pretty nuts.
Yeah.
And a briefcase.
And then it goes into a briefcase,
Which is Disintegrate by The Cure.
which definitely feels Edgar Wright to me.
the Siri joke on there is great.
Yeah. Plain
I will disintegrate you.
Plane Disintegrate by The Cure. As they're fighting inside of this briefcase that's falling.
You just see lasers coming out of it.
Yeah, and then falls in like a suburban pool.
Yeah, we cut to like a suburban family just having a barbecue, and then this briefcase falls out of nowhere into their pool, and they're all just like, "What the hell?" And then two guys just come bursting out of their pool, one in a like weird mech suit,
Right.
fighting each other.
Shooting lasers, and then Darren Cross gets thrown into a bug zapper.
That was pretty funny.
That was funny.
Don't understand. There's something in the bug zapper that could destroy us all.
But then Scott gets arrested.
Scott gets arrested, yeah. And then, so then Yellowjack, because he's full on nuts. Yellowjacket's play is
at some point during this fight, he goes just like from eccentric evil billionaire to crazy ass supervillain.
Yeah, I mean he does pretty early in the movie, just like cold blooded shoot a guy with the shrink
Didn't
thing.
like that at all.
Really?
Here's the thing: is that guy is like a higher up in a company. You can't just off that guy and be like, "Oh, nobody's gonna notice." Like,
I don't know, that was the
idea
scene
is
that
that they
felt very
can't
RoboCop.
necessarily prove anything.
But here's the thing: is like that would be a perfect opportunity to show Darren Cross as a legitimately terrifying villain of like. He gets this guy's job taken away from him, or he blackmails him with something, or he hurts his family, or there's like
It's too
there's
much
a moment
time
in
to
there.
take for that, though. Obviously,
Turning him into goop didn't make any sense, and we know that when you vaporize people, they turn into little piles of salt. Batman 66 taught me
no,
that.
but they didn't vaporize. They dehydrated those people.
That's true.
And anyway, we're not talking about Batman 66. We're talking about Ant-Man, where it's a shrink ray.
Hold on, we always talk about Batman 66.
Donovan
to my
and I are
chagrin.
always talking about Batman 66 at some point, at least.
But I don't know, that like goop sort of thing.
Again, it wasn't turning him into goop. They were shrinking him, but the like molecules weren't quite like holding together right.
Right.
So they just like destabilized and turned into a little pile of goop.
Yeah, and then he just wipes him off the floor with a paper towel. That's pretty. I don't know. I like that. That's pretty cold blooded.
Oh, it totally was.
Didn't care for
But
it.
so what he does now is he goes to Scott's ex-wife's house and threatens Cassie.
because a little bit earlier
draw.
we'd found out that Darren kind of knew that everyone, like all the Pyms
he
were
knew.
turning
Yeah,
against him,
that's right.
and that Scott was being used by them basically the whole time.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, Darren Cross knew what was going on.
So he was aware of Scott Lang's like family life
Mm-hmm.
and exactly what was motivating him. And so in the third act, when he like goes straight there, it's like, I'm going to take this guy down the only way I know how, through his daughter.
Yeah. And then that's one of the cool things about this movie, though, is like every Marvel movie has a big third act action sequence, as it should, but this one felt very. I'm going to use the word small scale, but not in a pun like way. But it's very
It's intimate.
yeah, and personal. Yeah, he's not trying to save the world. He's just trying to save his daughter.
Right.
Well,
in
and
the scene.
that's where this felt more like the first Iron Man movie. Where the stakes aren't saving New York or the world.
Well, I think because the movie is it still has kind of the phase one set of stakes.
Yeah.
Like,
Which I
we haven't-
really like.
We
I
haven't
really,
yet got
really
the
enjoy.
cosmic threats and
I hope we get
giant
more
helicarriers
stuff
and
like this going forward, because we're starting to breach into the cosmic stuff pretty heavily, and like I think to keep a lot of this universe grounded, we're gonna need more of these movies that have more personal stakes. So when we're introducing all of these new heroes, we're not continually ratcheting up everything. We can know that like, okay, there's still a ground level. These are still people.
I think something like Daredevil really shows that.
Well, the Daredevil did a great job of that, but moving forward, the movies, I feel
Yeah, and I actually think, I mean, well, it wasn't an origin thing, but I think Winter Soldier did a good job of balancing something larger with
it was
something
definitely a balancing act in that movie, and they did a good job.
Yeah.
You're right.
So then they have this big fight where they're shrinking, and people have seen it in the trailer, I'm sure, with the Thomas the Tank Engine.
Tank Engine, yeah.
But then also
Just falls over.
But
yeah,
I also love when they expand the Thomas the Tank Engine train
and it comes
the
blown out
ant.
of the house, and the ant is
That
running.
giant ant running through the house was just like, what the hell is that?
Yeah, because
People
Bobby
on the street
Cannavale comes in and
freaking out.
like jumps on him, and he's just like, "Oh my god, what?" I like that though. The movie's acknowledging like crazy things are happening. Isn't this crazy? This is crazy.
This is insane.
Yeah, which is fun.
I'll say Thor: The Dark World had one of my favorite little bits was like the crazy big fight in the third act of that movie is happening, and there's people in the library, and one of the characters is like, "What's wrong with you? Run away!"
Yeah.
And one of the guys is like, "Are you kidding me? That's Thor. I need to record this with my phone."
Yeah.
That was like, I love those little glimpses at what is the everyman's reaction to just how insane this universe
Yeah.
is becoming.
Oh yeah. So then there's there's this big fight, and in order to stop Yellow Jacket, Scott has to go subatomic,
Yeah.
which he was warned about not to do
Because
because
he'd
that's
shrink forever.
That's what happens. That's what happened. That's how Hank lost Janet.
Mm-hmm.
But in the literally. I mean, I know screenwriting structure fairly well, and as soon as they said that, I'm like, he's going subatomic in the third act.
Oh, yeah.
There's no question about it. It's too dangerous. There's no way. It's like he has to go subatomic in the third
Right.
act.
And as soon as Yellow Jacket's like, "You can't get into my suit. It's pure titanium."
Like,
and I'm
he's
like,
going
well, yeah,
subatomic.
he's going to
Yeah.
dive straight through that.
Yeah, and it's awesome, and it's super trippy and
Oh,
weird.
it's insane.
Yeah,
Like, if this is indication to how trippy a Marvel movie can get at the drop of a dime,
wait till we see Doctor Strange.
wait until Doctor Strange.
Yeah,
They've already kind of described that movie as sort of like a mystical acid trip. So I'm really
I know they've
looking
talked a
forward
lot
to it.
about Cosmos as a big influence on that, like the imagery in that. So that's sort of cosmic, weird nebulas and stuff. Yeah, I think that's going to be cool.
billions and billions of stars.
Right, exactly. That is, and that's going to be cool. So he does that. He stops. What happens to Yellow Jacket? He
implodes. I'm
Yeah.
not quite sure what happened there.
he's like taken apart at an atomic level. It seems like.
Again, it feels like he was being sucked inside of himself. I think implosion is the correct
Yeah,
word.
yeah, I think that's true.
'Cause he didn't explode. He didn't get like torn apart. He was like
He
getting
just kept shrinking.
There was like a
and shrinking and
singularity
shrinking.
inside of him, and like bits of him were shrinking at odd rates.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
And it was all like, oh, he's getting turned into something awful.
It's like a little black hole sort of thing.
Exactly.
yeah.
Getting
And
sucked
then
in on itself.
And then so Scott is stuck in the subatomic.
But the cry of his daughter.
Yep. And then once again, that fits perfectly with the themes of this movie. That he's got the he pulls out. He has the expanding disc, and he puts that in the belt.
Right, because the belt is like the regulator. It's making sure that he doesn't get too small or too big.
He
Right.
turns it off.
Yeah.
Right.
And he's
So if you can make it big again,
and he
all's
of
well.
course comes back, and he's reunited with his daughter, who finally gets to see him. As there's a line earlier in the movie, is the hero she already thinks he is. And he earns the respect of the cop. And everybody's all right then.
Happily
Yeah.
ever after.
But then we're taken to it's implied that they're now just fighting crime because
Kind of?
he's like I got to go to work.
Yeah, I didn't quite get that at the end. Like, it seemed like Hank Pym was like had him on speed dial to help him like do weird
There's
espionage stuff. Yeah, I don't know.
But then that leads to a scene with Louise where he talks about
I was talking to this guy who was talking to this girl who was talking to this guy who said that he was talking to the Falcon
yeah.
and he said he was looking for you.
And it basically boils down to could he be an Avenger, right? Because the last line of the movie is what the guy say? He said yes, and then ends.
Right.
Yeah.
one of the best, not maybe one of the best, but I really like that Stan cameo.
It's a good Stan
as
Lee
the
cameo.
Louise,
Yeah.
like giving the dialogue. Of, oh, she's into you, or whatever. He's the bartender.
Yeah. That was a fun one.
And we skipped over this, but the fight with Falcon earlier, great when he has to go through and
He has to go take a MacGuffin from the Avengers.
and
Yeah.
then Falcon's there to stop him.
Well, because it was Hank Pym's like storage space or whatever,
Right.
And now it's the new Avengers headquarters
Yep.
that we saw at the end of Age of Ultron.
Yep. And so he has to go get that.
But they
thing,
said
and he-
luckily nobody's home. But then Falcon shows up.
and he goes inside his suit and kind of.
I love
figures
this
all
whole
that.
thing where he's like, "I'm sorry, you seem like a really great guy."
Yeah. Scott Lang is a really sweet character. You know, what I
Yeah.
mean, like he's a heart of gold. He's not doing this because
Absolutely.
he likes.
And he's the
action
everyman.
adventure.
I think
He
that's
really
going to be
is.
good for his place in the Avengers. Is he's the audience to a certain extent, you know.
And then,
I don't know what I'm doing here either.
Yeah.
well, and Scott Lang has always been the audience.
I think him and
much more
Hawkeye are
than
gonna
Hank
get
Pym.
along swimmingly.
Oh yeah, but I love the line at the very end of that when Falcon is like, "Let's make sure Cap doesn't find out about
Yeah,
this."
Cap can never know
Cap
about
can never
this.
know about this.
I got my ass handed to me by a shrinking guy.
Yeah, exactly.
So the movie ends, and we've got two. We have a mid-credit and a post-credit scene, which we should talk about. The mid-credit scene
So excited.
Very, I mean, feels like what. I mean, obviously they had they felt obligated to do this.
I wish they had this like at the beginning of the third act. So
no, it has to be. It has to be. Scott Lang does something. That's
know.
the structure that's dictated.
But I mean, if that's where they're going to go with this, I'm so on board.
The mid-credit stinger is is Hope Van Dyne being shown that her father, Hank Pym, was working on like a new Wasp suit before Janet disappeared. It's like, well, it turns out maybe all this time I was building it for you. Because the whole movie, Hope Van Dyne is like, I am like way more qualified to be the Ant-Man. I am like ready to fight. I know the like ins and outs of this company. And Hank Pym is constantly being like, no. Eventually it's revealed that he doesn't want her in the suit because of what happened to her mother. And
that's the last time he ever put on the suit as well.
Right, exactly.
He can't even bring himself to do it.
Yeah, I think they just said like it takes a toll. There was no like clear explanation as to why.
I took it to be. I mean, I know he says it takes a toll, but I took it to be an emotional thing for him. I mean, that would fit what we've seen of him. He's just terrified of this technology that he created. But he'll put Scott Lang in it, no problem.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, so we get to the reveal of like the more modern looking Wasp suit,
which really
looks awesome.
cool looking
It
suit.
really looked cool. Yeah,
Man, and Evangeline Lilly was so good.
I've been a fan of hers going back to Lost, of course.
If she spins off, I mean, if they're going ahead with that, then I'm stoked.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll see it in whatever Ant-Man 2 or Ant-Man and the Wasp.
You don't think we'll see Wasp in Civil War?
No, not in Civil War. Maybe in an Infinity War, but I
think we'll definitely see her in an Infinity War.
I don't think so. There's already so many characters in that movie.
Yeah, I don't know. That's the reason I say why not is just because there's already so many. You gotta build two sides of a war, John.
Yeah,
gotta fill that. Gotta pad out the ranks.
I don't know. I hear there's a Spider-Man in that, so like
there was a fun little Spider-Man reference in Ant-Man. Actually,
yeah, there was.
It's like, well, what kind of guy are you looking for? We got guys who crawl on walls now. We got a guy who swings, and Falcon's just like, I'm looking for a guy who shrinks.
Yeah, and so then that takes us into our actual post-credit scene, which.
Is straight up a scene from Civil War.
Well,
a hard cut from goofy fun
into definitely directed by the Russo brothers.
So serious.
Where the color is gone. We're in handheld cinematography.
The stakes couldn't be higher.
And like the dialogue delivery, everything is now we're in a Cap movie. Because Captain America's here, and not only is Captain America here, but the Falcon's here, and not only is the Falcon here, the Winter Soldier
Bucky
is
here. Tied to a chair or something, or his hand in a
his
clamp?
mechanical arm is in a clamp.
Right.
He's looking real rough.
Yeah, they got him. Which is just like that was a what the hell when that happened at the end of this.
And they're talking about like we can't tell Tony Stark and like so good.
And they need somebody, and that leads to
Falcon going,
saying,
I know a guy.
Which obviously will be Ant-Man's introduction into Civil War.
That's so awesome.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, no.
So those are the. I mean, it's a pretty standalone movie with some threads to some other stuff.
Definitely, it didn't feel nearly as like plot thread lay E Downey. That's a really bad way of putting it.
It's a plot thread lay E Downey. I think that might be it. We're
laying
put
down
that
plot threads
shirt.
for like future movies.
No,
because I'll say this about Age of Ultron: as fun of a ride as that was, there's so much work that movie is doing to set up future movies.
Sure,
which is fine. But Ant-Man is almost the opposite of that, where it's very self-contained. There's a lot of fun, like, links to the other stuff going on and stuff that could be set up for future movies, but it's very, like, this movie you can see without really any other context, I feel like. You could have not seen any other Marvel movie up until now and, like, leaping into...
Yeah.
So long as you're vaguely aware of what's going on. Because there's that great scene in the beginning where Scott Lang is like, well, I think the first thing we got to do is call the Avengers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to suggest that we call the Avengers. Just right off the bat. That's great. That's a great line.
Well,
because that's like everyone says that about these movies. You know, it's like, why don't they just call the Avengers?
Why don't they just get the Hulk? Yeah.
But the
well,
1989 scene sets up why they don't call the Avengers. The sordid past that Hank Pym has already.
Yeah, he doesn't trust the Starks.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Oh, yeah, he said that. I spent years keeping one Stark away from this. Why would I hand it to another?
Right.
Well, and the other thing that is really impressive about Hank Pym's character is the way and the nonchalance he talks about the Tony Stark suit. You know, he's just like, another Iron Man suit. Blah, blah, like,
Yeah.
Totally unsubtle.
The Ant-Man thing is so much more powerful and so much more interesting technologically than the Iron Man suit to him that he feels like it's a toy, you know?
Right.
Just that shows you how serious Hank Pym is and how...
Well, Hank Pym's a serious scientist. Tony Stark's a rock star who plays with science.
Well, there's a fun thing from the comics that I think they're starting to bring into the movies a little bit, is the idea that you have these little corners of the Marvel Universe, and then you have the subsections. So you have like the super scientists, you have your Tony Stark, your Hank Pym, your Bruce Banners, and each of them is kind of under the impression that their little branch of science is the best branch of science. Yep. Tony Stark is all about the nanomachines and like fusing man with technology. Hank Pym's all about like technology expanding our horizons within the world we already know. Bruce Banner's all about like overcoming like disorders, if for lack of a better term.
Well, you've got a
wielding gamma.
You basically have like a mechanic, a chemist, and a biologist.
Right. No, that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, I think with those characters, and then you've got Reed Richards, who's just science,
an astronaut
in general.
Yeah.
Well,
sciencey. Quantum physics is kind of his thing. I guess would be what it is.
We'll see if that plays in the Fan 4 stick.
Yeah.
Expect our review of that in a couple of weeks.
There was a trailer for that before, and I'm no more excited about that movie.
No.
We'll see.
I don't
know. That trailer did not inspire any confidence.
I'll go to the theater. I'll bring my tomatoes. I'll be ready to throw them. But,
I got them.
I'm not going to shit on something I haven't seen yet, so we'll see.
No, but I mean, I do not have
books by their covers.
I try not to.
Just
but
for the
occasionally, I'll read the little flap on the back, and that usually gives me a pretty good indication of whether or not I'm going to like them.
Just for the record. Up till now, all of my recommendations have just been the back
based on
cover.
the cover. Okay,
impressive,
very nice.
So that's what I recommend.
You read all your books by the covers.
Only.
So
I'm a very quick reader.
Can read it at a glance.
Is there anything else you guys want to say about Ant-Man?
Yes.
Okay.
I've been waiting for this conversation the whole time. One, I wish they would have talked more about Hope Van Dyne's like middle child years or like middle years stuck on that island with the smoke monster.
Jesus.
I wish
it had to come
they would have done that. But more specifically, the romantic subplot in this movie comes out of nowhere. I mean, there's the like that.
No, I like it.
I mean, I love it.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, but
we didn't talk about this. Actually, one of my favorite scenes.
The whole movie, they are bickering and kind of becoming friends, and then you open a door and they are making out right there.
There's something that feels very realistic to me about that, though.
Really? Does that often happen to you? You bicker with people for a couple hours and then...
It's only happened 7 or 8 times to me.
If I had a nickel for every time I was bickering with someone, and then they just lean in, I'm like, whoa. Okay, I'm into this.
It went from comedy heist movie to romantic comedy in like half a second.
But I guess
because all romantic comedies they fight for an hour.
But I guess it's not like
I feel like Paul Rudd can shift gears into romantic comedy without even trying.
It's just this whole idea where
no
they're just
lead up to it.
Well, no, but I kind of like that. Where I mean, like this respect is just you see them grow to respect one another and stuff, and then it's also just like, oh, you're attractive, I'm attractive, let's make out. And then he's so funny in that scene.
But how dare you just grab me and start to kiss me?
Yeah,
you got to watch that girl, Hank.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I'm not that kind of guy. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, there is something about that though, where it's just like it's a very simple thing that that's why I guess when I say it feels realistic, is like it. Movies always make love or attraction seem very complicated, which it can be. But sometimes it's just like, I like you, you like me, that's it.
Yeah.
At its best, that's what it is.
But there is, other than that, there is no romantic subplot through the rest of the movie.
There's not. I wouldn't even call that a romantic subplot. It's just like a thing that's kind of tagged on at the end.
Cool. Which could be a disservice to like maybe they should have put more into like, oh, she's attracted to him maybe a little bit.
There's a little you can see. I mean,
there's one scene with Paul Rudd has his shirt off and she's just like, oh, okay,
yeah.
Well, I don't think it's a romantic thing, but I love when he's fighting. Is it Falcon? And he flips over and he does the thing that she does where she jumps up and puts her legs around his neck and throws him to the ground. She does
the thing that like Black Widow's been doing for like 6 movies now.
She does. I mean, it's a cool move. It's like I think once Hollywood figured out they could do that, it's like every female character has to do this move. Anyways, so he does that and she kind of looks like, oh, he is learning. That was a cool. I don't think that was a romantic thing, but it's like, oh, that's what I mean. Like she gives the face like that was unexpected. It's cool.
Yeah.
One thing I'd love to see, like talking about possibilities with Ant-Man, is we have the upcoming Jessica Jones show
Yes.
coming up. I'd love to see, because in the comic Alias, which we are pretty sure the show's going to be like heavily based on.
But yeah, I mean, I think much like Daredevil, maybe not an exact adaptation, but inspired by.
Yeah. But in the comic, we have like Jessica Jones trying to kind of find herself a little bit. And she does have a relationship with Scott Lang, at least briefly. And it'd be cool to see Paul Rudd, because he's no stranger to brief television appearances like Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
So like seeing him, I think he would feel the
He
least
was
out
the
of.
seventh friend
Yeah, there
at
you
the
go.
end of that show.
But I think having
Mike?
Scott Lang pop up on one of the Netflix shows would feel the least out of place, I feel like.
Yeah,
He could show up on a street level
I'm
show.
not expecting it, but I would like it if it happened.
The only thing that would be the issue is that right now he's in San Francisco. Is that right?
Mhm. Yes, he is.
As opposed to New York.
Yeah, but now he's like maybe a little globe-trotty because he's like helping Hank Pym
He's
do all
got-
sorts of weird
Yeah,
espionage
maybe.
stuff.
Maybe.
Who
Still
knows?
got his daughter.
Yeah. They can move to New York. I don't know. Scott Lang's new in town and he's looking for romance. I don't know.
So, sort of wrapping things up, guys. Out of our famous rating system of out of 7.5, what do you guys give Ant-Man?
Oof, toughie. I really liked Ant-Man, but I think at the end of the day, some of the weaknesses with like the villain being a little like bland and stuff kind of makes this movie like it's really fun. It's a good like popcorn movie, but like all the Scott Lang stuff, all the Hank Pym stuff, really really strong. All the Hope stuff, really strong. But that villain, like I've always said this, the good villain really makes a hero. And Yellow Jacket just doesn't do it for me. So I think like 6.3.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say I said about 6.2.
I'm going to give it a 6.5.
Yeah. I mean, it's really fun.
Yeah,
I think,
oh,
like
yeah.
I said, the villain is the weakest part by any means. I like his ragtag group of people that come in. I wish they were fleshed out a little bit more.
I
I'd
like
even have the
Louise.
time.
The other guys, they didn't
They're
make that
jokes.
much of an impression on me.
Yeah,
I
they're gag
wish they would have
characters.
spent more time figuring. You know, like again, I know they didn't have time, John.
Yeah,
It's-
I mean, this is a pretty brisk film. You know, I mean, like
Yeah.
it moves along at a clip. There's
but
not a lot of
unlike
wasted
the
space.
Ocean's 11 stuff, like I want to see even like Ocean's, all those movies, they give a lot of screen time to some of the like
True.
most distant characters. In
But those are also just heist movies. This is a heist movie.
they
It's also
have
a superhero
11
movie.
people.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
there
They
are
could have given
probably
a little bit
and
more
then
time.
12, and then 13.
Yes, that is the point. But I wish they would have spent a little bit more time making them a little bit more interesting. Because
Yeah.
Luis is fun.
Luis is really fun. He's the one you get the most sense of.
Yeah,
by far.
and he is straight the plucky comic relief.
Oh yeah, he's
that
your
whole
goofy
thing.
sidekick in this movie.
Man, that scene with him right at the beginning of the movie when Scott's getting out of jail, he's like, "Oh man, how's it going with that girl? Oh yeah, she left me, and my mom died,
Yeah.
and my dad got deported."
My dad got deported,
But I got the van.
But I got
but
the
I
van.
got the van. Well, at least that's something. I think Scott Lang says it's a nice van. Okay, cool. So yeah, we recommend you go out and see Ant-Man. It is,
We've kind of just spoiled the shit out of it, so if you
Yeah.
haven't seen it yet, we apologize.
but it's
yeah.
playing in theaters everywhere. I'm sure it's playing 400
again.
times a day at your local theater, or
Sure,
see it
sure.
again. Yeah.
Or
Okay.
tell us what you think of it if you've already seen it.
Yeah, and you can do that. We're at Panel and Panels on Twitter. We're Panel and Panels on Facebook. We're
You
on
can email us at panelandpanels@gmail.com.
Yeah, we're on
You
Inst-
could talk about stuff on our Instagram, Panel
Do
and Panels
people
all
talk
in the world.
on Instagram?
Sure,
Yeah,
little
you can
comments on
comment.
photos. Yeah,
Yeah, sure. All right.
it's like cutting out all the Facebook crap out of Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
All
like
right.
here's a picture. What do you think?
And then you can pin it on Pinterest, I guess.
Well, you can see what we've pinned on Pinterest and like pins and
that
follow
how it
us on
works?
Pinterest. Yep, that's right.
I'll never understand it.
That's
I know
right,
that.
buddy. You'll get there.
Nope, not gonna get there.
we gotta put John down.
He doesn't get the internet. He has to go.
we gotta send him out to that farm. All right, we'll talk.
What you guys talking
It's
about?
that farm where all old podcasters go when eventually one day.
to
All
meet the
of-
great big podcaster in the sky.
All us podcast veterans.
Yeah, that's right.
when we're just getting too long in the tooth for this.
That's right. You and Larry King.
After
Out
20
there.
some odd
Larry King.
episodes, yeah.
Larry King and I it's tough to keep it fresh.
Yep, that's right.
All right, so as we wrap that up, we turn now to our recommendation segment where we recommend comics we think you should be reading.
Yeah.
Grigoni, what do you got?
I recently just bought the last trade in the Posehn Duggan run on Deadpool. So they've got 8 trades of that out, plus some side stuff. There's like Deadpool the Gauntlet, in which he Deadpool meets his wife. But this whole like run is one of the strongest Deadpool runs in recent history, I feel like. Deadpool has been in a lot of books in the last 10 years.
It does seem that way, yes.
I believe at one point he makes the joke, he's like, I'm in 4 books right now. There's nothing you can do against me. In classic Deadpool fourth wall fashion.
Yeah. He's not quite to a Wolverine level, but he's getting there.
He's definitely getting there. You throw Deadpool in a book and it'll sell.
I think there was a time when Wolverine was literally in every comic Marvel was publishing.
He still is. You have to look hard.
There he is. Where is Wolverine?
He showed up in Ms. Marvel, so I'm not pushing.
That was one of my. I'm sorry to spoil that for anybody who hasn't read that yet. That is one of my favorite parts of all of the new Ms. Marvel stuff.
It's fantastic.
Their interactions together are perfect.
But yeah, the whole Brian Posehn and Jerry Duggan writing Deadpool has been some of the best Deadpool, I think, in recent history. They really come to the pathos of that character in how he's like conflicted about how just messed up his past is, and like there's depths to the Deadpool character that I feel aren't really gotten across by how he's presented in like popular culture. Like he comes off as this wacky serial killer, really, but there's a depth to the character that I think those two really tapped into. All the while he's also like killing zombie presidents and fighting weird space monsters and marrying a crazy demon vampire lady.
Because why not?
Yeah.
We've all done it.
There's so much fun to be had. So I highly recommend that whole run now that it's wrapped up.
Very cool. Donovan?
So for a while I've known about this for a long time and have kind of resisted recommending it, but I think I can fully do it.
Okay.
If you give in to temptation.
There is a website called theoatmeal.com where
is somebody else recommending a webcomic?
It is technically a webcomic.
My God.
After the whole jail
prophecy
fiasco, where I was like, wait a second, there are some webcomics I know about. There's this guy who calls himself The Oatmeal, who does, and they're like usually like single page comics about grammar or about narwhals or about reasons to punch a dolphin in the face. Like very sarcastic, very dry sense of humor, very over the top sense of humor. But really simple drawings, hysterical content. He does one about Nikola Tesla versus Edison, and like the whole like who is better and why. And anyways, there's so many great things on there. He does Cat versus the Internet, and like if you have not read it, just Google him, check out a couple of his comics. They're really witty, really fun. A little bit blue occasionally, so that the comedy gets a little crazy.
Sure.
If you're 12 and under, don't read them or something. I don't know.
We have a lot of tween and teen audience.
We've established we have kids that listen to the show.
Yeah. Do we? Wait, what?
Yeah, we've talked about that.
Have we?
Sure.
Ugh. I'm sorry, small children. You should stop.
You're their favorite, Gorgoni.
Oh, no.
They repeat everything you say.
That's right.
Well, shit.
So like I said, it's The Oatmeal. If you just Google The Oatmeal, it's so funny. Whenever you just need a good laugh, I go on there and check it out. So
very cool.
It's really fun. So technically a webcomic, all the visual stuff he does. That's there you go.
Somebody else has recommended a webcomic.
That's right.
Now to get you all to recommend one.
John,
that's gonna
do
be
you
the trick.
have
yeah, I do have a recommendation.
I'm glad, because it'd be really awkward if both of us had one. And
Yeah. No, I'm recommending The United States of Murder Incorporated.
Oh, cool.
Which is the new book by Brian Michael Bendis. And is it Michael Omen? Do you know how to pronounce that name?
Omen Avon? Michael
The guy who draws Powers.
No, I do not know how to pronounce it. I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah. Anyway, this is the creative team behind Powers. This is their new book, United States of Murder Incorporated, which is basically an alternate history book. It takes place in an alternate world where the mafia didn't disappear like it did kind of in real life or fall apart. It actually just took over the world. So the country, not the world.
Right.
So the United States is carved up into the different family territories of La Cosa Nostra.
Interesting.
And
I'm fully in support of this.
It's amazing, and it's about a newly made man and this awesome assassin woman who's one of the coolest characters I've seen in a comic in a while. as they're on a basically, for reasons I won't get into for spoiler territory, they're kind of on a road trip through the United States of Murder Incorporated,
Interesting.
trying to figure out what's going on.
Is it literally called that in the comics? The United States of Murder Incorporated?
No, I think it's just the United States, but
Sure.
But everybody knows, this guy's got Vegas, that guy's
Right.
got New York, this
Gotcha,
is that.
gotcha.
The country's just been carved up. And you see all these flashbacks to famous historical events, but now through the filter of the mafia controlling everything.
So Capone just like never faded away.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. That kind of stuff. Yeah, those guys just maintained power and then completely took over.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Cool.
so the country is just a giant gangland.
Awesome.
It's a really cool book. The first trade of that is out now.
Is that an image book?
No, it's who does Powers is Icon?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's them.
Okay.
It's a really good book. You should check it out.
That's Bendis's like imprint, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Because they also put out Brilliant, which was him and Bagley. And I recommended that on the
About
show
Ed
as well.
Begley Jr.
Yeah, and Ed Begley Jr. He's doing some really innovative stuff in comics now.
Yeah, like mostly not writing them.
Right. Yeah.
It's all
So
like-
innovative.
It's an innovative choice not to write.
Yeah,
and
I mean, everybody else is
the-
writing.
Alan
Yeah.
Moore-esque.
Yeah, that it is. And we got an Alan Moore reference in on the show.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think that's going to do it for our show today. For Panel on Panels, I've been John Campbell.
I am currently Mike Gorgoni.
And I will always be Donovan Eiler.
Keep reading comics, everyone. And remember, #Archie is our stalwart.
#Archie is our stalwart.
#Archie is our stalwart.